So this is an experiment, and this is an intersection where dialogue will happen between all kinds of people, and that's the kind of idea, so that we will find neuroscientists, people from medicine, and people from the arts, and then whoever and whatever is represented in our audience, whatever surprises we have from our audience, you're all included. So the idea is to observe together, to ask questions together, to point things out to one another, and create some kind of a conversation.
My name is Mark Apin. I'm a clinical psychologist at the Trauma Center in Brookline. And so I think this first part, what I'm going to do is really tell you my story of how I came to be at the Trauma Center. And there's a quote, and I'm butchering the quote, but it goes something like, life can only be lived forward, but understood backwards. So I can't tell you what my future holds, but I can tell you the story of how I got to where I am. And one of the things we know or I know as a psychologist is that the nature of memory is very malleable. For example, I'm an identical twin, and I have memories that I swear they were me, and my twin brother would swear they're him. So the story that I'll tell you about how I got here, it may be lacking in the objective truth, but the subjective truth is there. So I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, which is a nice little Midwestern town. I don't know if some of you know it, but like I said, I was an identical twin, and I was a very shy kid. And what happened was I didn't have too many friends. Then after my third grade year and into my fourth grade, my family moved. It was just in town, but it involved switching schools, and it was very difficult for me. And my brother and I, we had to switch schools, and so I should probably back up and tell you that I've thought a lot about what it means to be a twin, and I think that being a twin has really informed my identity in a lot of ways. That I think you hear a lot about people saying with twins with their special language and that sort of thing, and people would always ask me, what's it like to be a twin? And my snarky response to that has always been, what's it like not being a twin? I think that with my twin brother and I, we were on the other end of that spectrum, in that we consciously and did everything in our power to really differentiate ourselves and to try to get ourselves separate identities. And so how that translated into this transferring schools in the fourth grade is that we didn't know anybody, and so at the time you're supposed to make friends and that sort of thing. And how my brother found a way to make friends was to join in a group in making fun of me. And so going up through my middle school years, it was a very difficult time for me. I was already a shy kid. I came from a Midwestern family, and I don't know if anyone knows anything about the Midwest, but there's kind of a cultural thing of people don't really talk about their emotions. And my family was on that extreme. We didn't talk about our feelings. And so with my brother taking sides with with his friends in middle school against me, what their game was to try to tease me to the point that I would lose my temper. So, of course, what did I learn? I learned how to keep that under wraps, how to keep my emotions under wraps, and it to an extreme. So I'm coming from this Midwestern family, and I'm taking it to an extreme. High school rolls around. I start to make some friends of my own, and guess what? I discover acting, right? And it's this wonderful thing. I do a high school production. I'm like, this is awesome. And in Madison, there was an experimental theater called Broome Street Theater, and it was founded in 1969 by some, I guess you could call them radical hippies or something. But they did all original theater and that sort of thing. And so I started to get, my parents took me to a couple productions there, and I got interested in that. And so then that was even better, because here I am, they did all original work, and the artistic director, his style of working was to get a cast together before even writing the script. He also procrastinated, and so the first couple weeks of rehearsal, we would just be rehearsing the same thing over and over again, but that's another story. What I really liked about it was that here I was getting this opportunity to create characters for the very first time, and to express things on stage that it wasn't me. I can express this freely. And to have that say in the artistic process was really, really exciting for me. And so that took me into college, and I initially was a theater major in college, and at the University of Wisconsin, the theater department is not, they thought they were one step off of Broadway, but a little bit further, actually. So I didn't really fit in with the theater department there. So I actually graduated with a theater degree, having never done a production at the University of Wisconsin. I was doing productions at this community theater, which of course they looked down upon. So here it was, interestingly enough, I had been treated as an outsider by my twin. I go into theater, and this theater group is sort of this outsider theater group, and I'm treated like that in college. And I really made this decision that I didn't want to pursue acting as a profession. I think I was convinced partially by the fact that it's got a 95% unemployment rate, and that's important. And a practical side that said, okay, maybe I want to get a degree that I can get a job. So of course I chose psychology, because that's so much better. And so I graduated school with a psychology degree and a theater degree, and I still really didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. So I had been working in a restaurant throughout college, and this waitstaff manager position had opened up, and concurrently with that, my twin brother was actually diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, so this position had health insurance with it. I said, sign me up, I will take this position. And so I ended up doing restaurant management, which I hated for the most part. And I was waiting for inspiration. I was waiting for inspiration of what do I want to do with my life. And I was waiting for this thunderbolt, or this certainty to strike me. And enough time passed that I realized that doesn't happen. So I really thought about, okay, what is it that that's when I started thinking about what do I like, and what is it about the different parts of my life that really fit together. And it was the working with people, and the creating of characters. So I decided to apply for graduate school in clinical psychology. Of course, I didn't really research it, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I applied to a couple schools, sent out some applications. Didn't know that I was supposed to research advisors, all this stuff. Luckily, I applied to Emory University, and there was a professor there by the name of Marshall Duke. How a Jersey Jew ends up with a name like Marshall Duke, I don't know. But he was really, really interested in interdisciplinary work, in how psychology interfaces with other fields, how psychology interfaces with the arts, with language. For example, one of the papers that I read that he wrote right before I got into school with him was on this, I always pronounce it wrong, but it's got dramatic personae. It's the list of characters at the start of a Shakespeare play. And as you probably know, it goes from, for Hamlet, for example, the most important character is going to be Hamlet, and it goes all the way down to soldier number 2. Right? And he had written a paper with an English professor on a theory of personality based on that. Basically, that we have these roles in our lives, like some of them are very important. Best friend, lover, girlfriend, that sort of thing. And then some of them are less important. Traveler in an airport, guest at a wedding, and sort of likening that. And I thought that was really, really cool. And so I was really excited for the opportunity to work with him. And so I came into graduate school. I said, I'm going to study how theater and psychology come together. And that's what I started doing. And that's what I did my master's project on, that sort of thing. And then in the course of that, you got to pay the bills too. So I did some teaching assistant stuff. And I got involved in a community psychology class. And the professor for that, it was a very experiential thing. So we took undergraduates from Emory took them out into underprivileged part of the town, into a middle school, and ran a mentoring program. And that was an amazing experience. That got me interested in issues of culture, race, health disparities, that sort of thing. And I started to really connect with that. And so the professor for that class was also setting up a big research project at Grady Hospital in downtown Atlanta, looking at post-traumatic stress disorder in a general civilian population. And Grady Hospital is a 953-bed hospital. Downtown Atlanta serves primarily underprivileged, indigent, the lowest of the low as far as socioeconomic class. And so she really recruited me into that, and I started doing this work with these trauma survivors. And in that setting, trauma was a norm. It wasn't an exception. 80%, at least 80% of people had at least one what's called a criterion A stressor, which in the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, you have to have some sort of traumatic stress, and that's what it is. A criterion A stressor is that traumatic stress, and so it was really just amazing. It opened my eyes to see how ubiquitous trauma is in certain parts of our culture. And also these people, these were very disenfranchised people. These were people who were treated as outsiders. And so that's what got me interested in it. And so then postdoc comes around, and I want to continue doing trauma. So what do? I don't want to go to the veterans system, which is, they do a lot of great work, but they do a lot of work with soldiers who have this adult onset trauma, kind of very circumscribed trauma, and I was more interested in trauma across the lifespan. So I Googled things. I found the Trauma Center, and I found Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who had founded this, and he was one of the pioneers. He was, along with Dr. Judy Herman, he coined the term complex PTSD and developmental trauma disorder, which I can tell people more about if you're interested in it, and that he was really had played this role of shedding light, of focusing the spotlight on places that it historically had not been. And so I said, I want to do this work, and I applied, and here I am. And I don't think it's any accident that I'm working at a center where there are some pretty predominant models of treating trauma. They are called cognitive behavior therapy. They're called prolonged exposure. They're called cognitive processing therapy. That's what the VA does. That's not what we do. We are looking at specifically the trauma that happens in childhood and across the lifespan, not just childhood, but we do a lot of work with childhood and how that affects brain development, how that fundamentally affects our relationship with our bodies. And that's how I got into the neurofeedback and electroencephalogram work that I'll be telling you about in a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to be showing you some neurofeedback. I'm going to tell you about what the EEG is and focusing on certain aspects of that. The electroencephalogram, which I'll get to, what that is the electrical activity produced by the brain. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on that. But basically, we put a sensor on the scalp, pick that up, give people feedback on it. It's a form of biofeedback. So we give people feedback on what kind of brainwaves they're producing and can teach people how to produce more of certain ways and less of other waves and change how your brain is functioning.
And Mark is going to show you that after you meet Lisa Peck and hear her story. Lisa has been going to Mark for this feedback, for this neurofeedback. So the story will progress along. You'll get to actually see a projection.